Hello, everybody. This is Tony Hager with Takedown Wrestling, and today I'm joined by Adam Hunter, comedian, and we're talking about maybe putting together a movie about wrestling, and it's going to be a different type of a wrestling video that fans are really known for, know wrestling about. It's going to be about a story about a kid that, couldn't make it and then he ends up winning state, or this is more of a kind of a hilarious version that you're calling it of the Bad News Bears.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has that element of it. It's sort of like it's about this guy that I don't want to give away the whole plot, but this guy that was supposed to win state. He was like this up and coming star. He was the man, but he transferred to this school, and the kid and he kind of took the spot of the kid that was the star before he came. He was so the kid had to kind of bump up a weight class, which he wasn't as strong at. So that kid gives him food poisoning right before the big state tournament, and so that he ends up going to the hospital. Doesn't get to wrestle. The kid that gave him food poisoning becomes a stud. He wins the states, gets the college scholarship, and now it's 20 years later, and he'd never kind of he never bounced back from that situation, and uh, he ends up coaching this team of middle school kids, and of course the best team in the world, or not in the world, in like the league, is coached by the guy that gave him food poisoning. So, and then that's kind of where we like start. That's where the movie starts, and it's sort of like a Bad News Bears meets Kingpin meets the Mighty Ducks. And I was looking, and there's never really been a wrestling comedy before. There's been
No.
comedies for every other sport. It's hard to actually write a wrestling comedy because it's an individual sport, but it's a team sport. So each kid has to go through their journey, and you can't just write it as a whole team or the whole, and you can't write it as like just one. It's not just one individual. It's the whole. So that's kind of what's interesting and tough to write. But I think it's it's a really funny movie. It's a movie you could take the whole family to. I mean, it's got a PG-13 element, but it's a really funny movie.
So your background, you coach junior high wrestling now, but you're also on the road doing comedy shows. What got you into this? I mean, the two things that you love, comedy and wrestling. Is that how you just came up with it?
Yeah, exactly. I wrestled in middle school and high school. I went to the Hyde School, which is in Bath, Maine, and I ended up winning the Class A championships 4 years in a row. And I won the All New Englands twice, and then I ended up getting a college scholarship to Hofstra. Tom Ryan actually gave me a scholarship. He was taking me to wrestling camp over in Long Island, and I ended up going to Binghamton. And it didn't actually. I kind of got burned out of wrestling and didn't actually achieve what I wanted to in the sport. Kind of fell into the college traps a little bit, and um, became a comic. I became a comic, but I used what I needed from wrestling to become a comic, and I've been doing stand-up comedy for 15 years. Been on Leno twice, and I was a finalist on Last Comic Standing. I just been doing stand-up, grinding it out. But when I moved to LA 10 years ago, I needed a job, so I took a job as a middle school wrestling coach out in Brentwood, California. I started the whole program. Actually, there was no program before I got there, and I've been doing it 10 years straight. I actually love doing it. One of my favorite things to do in the world. And the kids didn't have a high school to wrestle, so I actually started a high school program for the kids too.
Wow.
And they had 3 kids go to state this year. They won city over at Palisades. So I love the sport. The sport's given me so much, and I've always when I was growing up, there was no. I'm 36. There was no like MMA really wasn't what it was now. There was no weight classes or there was no rules. So I've always been a fan of mixed martial arts, and I wrote the MMA awards. I was a writer for that like the last 6 years, and I've been writing these funny sketches. I wrote all about the cake video with Daniel Cormier,
Mm-hmm.
and the Filipino wrecking ball with Mark Munoz. I wrote and directed that. The Randy Couture divorce attorney. I helped write that one, so sort of always had like a fun. And then I ended up starting this thing called MMA Roasted, where I get to roast MMA fighters before events. So I put out these videos all the time, just making jokes, and started MMA Roasted account, which led to me working at Fox Sports and having a podcast with Fox Sports and a writing deal with them called Text from Last Fight, where I pretend I'm fighters texting each other after each fight. Uh,
That
and
is that I spent like half of my day yesterday looking through all those texts. I mean, that's gold. I mean, that's just
oh,
hilarious stuff. I'm not a huge UFC fan. I watch UFC when there's wrestlers,
yeah, me
and
too.
right now, as you know, I mean, the sport of UFC is dominated by wrestlers right now. There's six champs.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been that way for a while, and there's nothing more that I like than having like wrestlers on my podcast. I kind of like I mean I know what it's like at a high level high school and how hard that was, and how you get these guys that are D1 champions or D1 All Americans. I know how that's probably one of the hardest things to do in the world, and then you combine that into MMA, and I got so much respect for these guys. So I really think the movie would be really good for the sport. I think it'll like anything else, a lot of times people don't understand things, and they don't like something because they don't understand it. And I think that one of the good things that happened in MMA was the Ultimate Fighter, like the TV show, got people really into it because you could watch these guys on TV that are, oh, that's the fireman, now he's in MMA, or that's this, and I can really identify with that person. And I think the same thing goes with like wrestling. It's not as mainstream as it should be because I think this movie will help that a lot because it will provide a lighter side, and it will get people really into it. So it's such a great sport. I mean, I learned so much about myself on the wrestling mat, and it's just one of those things. Like and it crossed over with stand up comedy because there were times that I was wrestling where I'm like looking at my opponent. I'm like, all right, this guy's bigger, stronger, and faster than me. How am I going to beat him? I just got to find that one move, whether it's the ankle pick or the low single that the guy can't defend. And same thing with comedy. I'll be on stage and I'll be like, man, this crowd's not laughing at anything, but I got to make them laugh for an hour. Like, how do I do that? Okay, well, maybe it's crowd work, or maybe it's certain jokes, or maybe you got to slow it down. It's being a really good problem solver.
How big was like the last comic standing being a part of that? How great was that for your career?
That was great. I mean, before that, I was only featuring at the clubs, and I wasn't really headlining at all. So, and then I did that, and I haven't featured since. I've just been headlining straight. And I toured the whole world. I mean, since the last comic, I've been to almost every. I've been to Africa twice, Europe, Korea, Japan, Cuba, Guam. I've been to all these different military bases doing comedy. I literally just got back from Seychelles last week doing comedy for Prince. I was in Dubai last week. I'm just doing, constantly doing comedy, you know, all the time, which has been great.
So is wrestling, I would assume. I mean, I've watched. I've been to a lot of comedy shows. We have the Funny Bone Des Moines here in Des Moines, Iowa, and we get to go out there every once in a while. I actually saw Mick Foley on Sunday. He was really more like kind of just telling stories about wrestling. But I would just imagine the pressure to come up with new material is just crazy. I would be stressed out about it. I mean, obviously you're a comedian for a reason, but wrestling is a sport where when you get on the mat and you're teaching these kids, I coach junior high wrestling myself. Everything kind of just goes away, and you're able to coach wrestling. And is that a reason why you coach wrestling? Is just to kind of get away from the MMA world, the bright lights, and kind of be there with the kids?
Yeah, that's a big reason. I mean, especially in LA, where everything is like, oh, did you get a call back? Did you book this? Did you get that? Oh, I went to producers. It's just like a lot of rejection. It's a lot of like, it's a lot of, I wouldn't say fake, but a lot of superficial things that are important to people, And wrestling, I find, was one of the most honest things I've ever done. It's like you go out there, you either you win or you lose, but it's not. Maybe you have a bad decision by a referee, but it's usually like pretty cut and clear. And it is. It's fun. I also, it's a good time, and there's nothing bad. I mean, it's hard. I got to drive an hour to practice, sometimes an hour and a half back. It's like not much money, if any, really, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
we don't get
but
paid much in Iowa either.
yeah, but yeah, there is something really cool about, getting a kid, especially at a junior high level, because most of the kids have never wrestled before. Very rarely do I get a kid, maybe he transferred in, that had any kind of experience. So starting from scratch, and you're taking these kids from from nothing, and then showing them a couple moves, and next thing you know, they're getting their hands raised, especially at that age, because I had a really hard time in middle school. I was bullied a lot, and I got sent to boarding school in eighth grade. There was no eighth grade in my boarding school. It was just a high school. That's how the parents were like, so it was a really great experience for me. But it was kind of an alternative school for kids who needed to, redirect their energy, as the best way I can put it. Um, so I mean, there's something really kind of cool about that, and it becomes addicting. I mean, sometimes like literally, I'll be thinking more about the wrestling match than I will be like I'll have like an audition for like a 4-year thing, pays like $1 million if I get it, and I'm thinking about, man, I hope this kid wins tomorrow. I really hope he gets the single leg down or whatever it is. But it's something really cool about that, and I definitely fell in love with coaching. I coached in like Brooklyn for a little bit at Brooklyn Poly Prep, and I was the assistant wrestling coach there, and this really helped. This definitely helped. So
Do you? I One thing I would be want to know is, do you bring your comedy into the wrestling room? It's such a serious sport. Do
I
kids like ask you to tell jokes ever?
I do. It definitely goes over most of their heads. I'm making the other coaches laugh more than the kids. But sometimes the kids will look me up on YouTube, and then I'll be like, "Hey man, do push-ups." They're like, the kid will be like, "Yeah, like the Asian guy in porn," or he'll like finish my joke, and I'm like, or he'll curse. Or like, "You can't curse." Well, you cursed on TV. I'm like, So there's definitely like, I find a lot of kids, like when they're older, come to my comedy shows, like the high school kids, and they love it. Or the parents come, and I'm always nervous when the parents come. I'm like, oh man, my comedy show's pretty dirty, and I'm just like, oh no, I hope I don't get in trouble here. But I got a really cool athletic director, and I try to make it as fun as possible. Sometimes I make it too fun, where like the kids actually in the high school don't they don't make it too far into high school, because they're I it's for me, I only have them twice a week, twice three times a week. It's only an hour and a half practice, and it's a charter school, so the
Okay.
kids get bussed in, which is cool, because I got a lot of diverse kids, which I like love. And we're good. I mean, when I first started, like they didn't win a match. I remember we got blown out by Harbor Westlake, like 64-0 or something. Like our first match, like, I had them for 2 weeks, and then they had their match, and then we've either won or come in second in the leagues every year. Like we've got a solid program, and actually 3 of my kids this year got offered scholarships to high schools from middle school,
That's
which is,
amazing.
yeah. So
I mean, has the administration been supportive of you? You've obviously started this program and it's been going for 10 years.
yeah.
I mean, was it hard to earn their respect as a comedian?
No, because the guy I have in charge, this guy Paul Foxon, he actually started this after school program for kids, and so the kids have to actually pay to do the sport, but any kid can get financial aid, which not every kid knows, but that's something we have to enforce. But he's also the PE teacher, so he constantly picks out kids that he thinks are going to be good wrestlers. So it's great, because I have like an in-house like scout, because like a kid will like get into a fight in gym class, like, you need to wrestle. So I got these like crazy kids on my team, but they're they usually make for pretty good wrestlers, which is great. And then what happened was, it was no high school, and then the kids kept hitting me up on Facebook. Hey coach, wrestling changed my life. I want to wrestle, and that was a lot harder. The high school program, middle school was no problem. The high school program, 3 or 4 years, I had to keep going there, getting denied, and the kids, we don't need another sport, and I have to explain to them how cheap wrestling was, and So finally, they just put a mat like in the science. It was going to start off as a club first, and then they got this guy Randy Butler, who was the coach at Covina, who came in, who really took this program, ran it like a college program. I mean, 12 months out of the year, he really had to prove it. And then next thing you know, these kids were awesome. I was unbelievable. Randy recently he passed away last year. He had a 27-year-old guy with brain cancer, just dropped dead like within 6 months.
Hmm.
So actually looking for a new coach right now, and they got a bunch of people, and hopefully this guy Steve will do it. But yeah, but I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing how good these kids have come, and I mean, it's just luckily I got some really really cool kids. So.
The writing of this movie, is it based off of you as a coach and these kids that you've seen over the years? I mean, is there a little like a character that you've based off of a kid that you knew like 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of kids I kind of like. I was they're hybrid, of like 4 or 5 kids into one kid, or I mean, definitely was like a lot. So many times I've been coaching, I'm like, oh, this should be in a movie. Like this should be in a movie. This should. Finally, I just wrote the movie. I'm like, you know what? I just sat down, and luckily I wrote it. I started writing it before Twitter was around. I've been working on this for years now. I finally put the finishing touches on, and for so long I was like, I've been in Hollywood. I've got, X amount of success, where I was on like, The Real Husbands of Hollywood with Kevin Hart, and I was on this show, and I was on that show, and Chelsea Lately, and but it was a lot of like, oh, I have to wait till I get famous, and then I'll make this movie. I have another script as well. But then I'm like, you know what? Why am I doing that? Why am I waiting till someone else to put me in something?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why don't I just do it myself? I have 52,000 people that follow me on MMA Roasted. I got 10,000 people that follow me on my Twitter account. I got another, 8,000 on Facebook. I have a podcast that reaches, 10,000 people weekly, and then I started reading stats of like, well, 70% of movies in Sundance this year were Kickstarter projects. All these people are making their own stuff. Well, why should I sell this movie to somebody else, and then they put Jason Biggs as the lead or Stifler, and then they rewrite the whole movie, and then I'm angry, and maybe cut me a little check, but by the time that gets taxed and half goes to this and half, it's like, okay, I walk away with $3,000, and this movie becomes a hit. I go, I can just do it myself, and I can do it myself, and I can control it, But now, once I made that choice, it was like, all right, now I got to beg, borrow, and steal, and have to hit people up. Hey, and hitting up old high school friends that, hey, I haven't talked to you in 20 years, but will you give me $20 for my movie?
Pay $10 to be official backer, and you can go to Indiegogo.com project/pinned the movie by Adam Hunter. We're going to put this out on our Twitter, and you can go to Adam Hunter's Twitter account. It's all over the place. He's been hitting up those high school friends and MMA stars to, let people know about it. But there's lots of different levels that you can help Adam out in his quest to do this movie that's just, I want to see a lighter side of wrestling. Foxcatcher was like the darkest movie ever, and it just didn't. It was a good movie, but to shine the light on wrestling, it wasn't kind of what I think a lot of wrestling fans, diehard wrestling fans, thought it was going to be. So $10 level, 25, 50, 75, 100, all the way up to, see, what's your highest? $20,000, and you get a private comedy show by you. And you've been, like you said, on all over the place. You've been on Jay Leno, and these famous people that I see on this website is just it's pretty remarkable. And to have somebody like yourself in the wrestling community, that's what this sport needs. This sport needs a star in Hollywood to help grow it, and this movie can get it done. So. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. We're going to have this up on the website. Check it out. Share it. Let everybody know what Adam Hunter is doing. Adam, where can everybody find you, listen to your podcast at?
You can go to my website, adamhunter.com. It's got everything. If you follow me if you're an MMA fan, follow at MMA Roasted or at Adam Comedian. Facebook, Adam Comedian or Adam Hunter. And my podcast is on iTunes, SoundCloud. It's on all that. We had this week we had Frankie Edgar on. Last week we had Randy Couture. Next week we have Chris Weidman and Johnny Hendricks. So got a good bunch of guys coming on.
Sounds good. Well, check out MMA Roasted, the podcast, and hopefully stay tuned to the hilarious version of the Bad News Bears, Mighty Ducks, Kingpin, and a little Vision Quest. Thank you.
Thank you.